All right, day 470 going live. Let's do this, everybody. Today we're looking at a property in Birmingham, Alabama, and just so you all understand what I'm filtering on, I'm looking at properties that are 4 bedroom plus in the Birmingham market, single family homes, right here, on Redfin for less than 3 days because I'm starting to track what are the properties coming onto the market. Now, if you've been following us and what we've been doing for the past 12 months in this market, you would notice that, hey, for the most part, we've been tracking all these properties that have been sold in the last 12 months. Then we've been starting to track all the properties that are sold by zip code in the last 3 months. And now we're tracking properties that are coming onto the market by zip code, right? Same type of property details, bed, bath, square footage, year built, lot size, whether they have a garage or a basement or an HOA, and what subdivision they are, right? Just by looking for the subdivision, I can see that this property is closest to Spring Lake, right? We're between Spring Lake and Morningside. Between Spring Lake and Morningside. And I can see, next time I see a property in here that I'm looking to BRRRR, right? Which stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Now I know what they're being sold for. I can see that this property that I was tracking since last week is still on the market. It was listed for $69 a square foot. This property is a 4 bed, 3 bath, 4 bed, 3 bath, 2395 square foot, but it's being sold at a much higher per square foot at $100 per square foot. So depending on what these properties sell for, that's going to drastically affect, hey, what does your ARV look like? Now, why is the BRRRR strategy so advantageous? Let's use an example. Let's say you buy a property for pennies, like $10,000 for that home, and you spend $60,000 to renovate that home. But now all of a sudden, you're able to make it worth $100,000. Now you're able to go take a debt service coverage ratio loan, a DSCR loan, which is an asset-based loan, for 70%. Sometimes you can go as high as 80% of that home's value. Now, you can get back out the 70 grand you originally invested, which is the 10 grand of purchase and 60 grand of renovations. Take that 70 grand out, and now you can rinse and repeat, right? You can buy another property, maybe for 20 grand and 50 grand next time, using the same $70,000 that you originally had. That's what makes that strategy so scalable, right? Because you can use the same capital over and over. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is you going out there and saving money from your full-time job for a 20% down payment and then doing that over and over and over again. That's the problem. Okay. So what you want to know here is going forward, you had to decide what strategy works best for you. The BRRRR strategy is advantageous, but that's not to say you can't be successful on your own terms doing the other way, saving for 20% down. You just got to understand why you're taking that strategy, okay? But what's most important for the BRRRR strategy you have to understand is getting your ARV, or that after repair value, correct. Because if that lender doesn't give you the appraised value that you're looking for, that allows you to take back out all of your invested capital, well, what are you going to do to challenge that appraisal? What supporting sold comparable properties can you put forth to justify the value that you're looking for? Because that's the difference between you getting out all your capital or leaving 10, 20 grand in there, and now you all of a sudden you have to save up money again, right? Just like that other strategy we talked about, where you're saving up money for your 20% down. This is so important, okay? All right, so for us to track the ARV, we're just gonna put this onto our list of properties that are being listed for. So I got all these details in here now. Let me just put some general notes about the condition of the home. I mean, for the most part, this property looks well renovated, well finished. I would say these are above average kitchens and bathrooms. Yeah, these are above average. Above. One second. I think my keyboard ran out of batteries. while it's charging up, we're going to look at why you're tracking the properties and what they're coming on the market for. Because if you follow and understand how 30-year mortgage interest rates are driven, this generally driven by two things, right? Not just those two things, but these are huge drivers, which is the interest rate of the 10-year treasury yield. And you can see that this 10-year treasury yield is essentially at its 12-week high. That's why you see interest rate back up over the sevens. However, you don't see in the eights because it's also driven by the spread between the 10-year treasury yield and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. As that spread narrowed, right, historically it's been about 1.5 to 2%, and went as high as 3%, which is why you saw interest rates in the eights, right, when almost the sales volume dropped to historic lows. That's what drives the affordability. That 30-year mortgage interest rate drives the affordability of the home. So that's why when your interests go up and the spread continues to get wider, that drives interest to an amount that people do not find affordable anymore, primarily because of how much prices have appreciated over the last couple of years, along with how high interest rates are that drives the payment up. So that's why we stay on top of the data and all the properties are coming on the market, especially if you want to track what they are being sold for. Because as interest rates go up and up like this, depending on recently sold comps to get back out most of your capital, you have to track interest rates. You have to track what a property is being sold for. Otherwise, you would be doing yourself a great disservice by essentially putting your head in the sand and hoping and praying for the best. That's not a strategy. Okay. All right. So now that we got these properties in here, I just want to write that above. Let's see if it's connected yet. Yeah, there we go. Connected. There we go. Above average kitchen, bathrooms, no touch of paint likely needed. Paint is since someone is living there already, and no flooring work needed. All right, so that gives me a pretty good sense of what and how the home looks like. Now, if I were to just use this and analyze this deal as is, I might say, hey, this property is worth $240,000. So let's put in the asking price in the spreadsheet. My renovation on this home, let's say I got 300 square feet of just touch up paint, so that's $900. 500 for some landscaping. 1,500 bucks for the roof, in case there's any patchwork I need to do, because I've always had some roof work that needed to be done at the home. I don't need to put in any appliances, so there we go. I will replace all 3 toilets with a high pressure flush toilet, so I don't get any clogged toilet calls. And now I have a total rehab number of about 5,100. Great, easy enough. That's pretty much turnkey. Now, for my rents in this area, when I go to affordablehousing.com and I go to the market rent estimator, and I plug in the address and plug in the bedroom count, I can see that the average rent for 25 units within a 2-mile radius is $1,652. Man, that's a little high. I normally don't see rent above 1,400 in this area, so I want to go up to 1,500 here just to be a little conservative. But I'll underwrite with $1,600 so you guys can see what the difference is in just $100 of rent. Okay, let me put in some of the expense numbers now. Now, for expense numbers here, we see that the property taxes are $117, so 117. Obviously, double check with your county assessor records before you close so that you can be pretty accurate with what you're seeing. And I'm assuming this 186 payment calculator for homeowner insurance is dependent on and assuming that someone's going to live here as a primary residence. So if I don't use it as a primary residence and as an investment property, chances are the insurance company is going to view it as a riskier asset. So that's why I'm adding a 20% premium here right now by multiplying by 1.2. Then for my other expenses, I'm leaving aside 10% of my rent every single month for maintenance, right? Because I know that the roof is going to get replaced in 10, 15, 20 years. I just got a roof replacement bill at one of our homes in Arizona where for $15,000. And if I didn't set aside 150 bucks every single month for 100 months in anticipation of that repair, then I would have been completely underestimating my expenses and overestimating my profitability. So don't be that person, and definitely don't trust anyone out there that tells you there's no maintenance, even if it looks like a super turnkey property, right? Because if you hold this property, you gotta have money set aside for those expenses. Otherwise, it's just not responsible. All right. Then I got 10% set aside for my property management expenses, and I got 5% set aside for my vacancy expenses, which means I know that the home is going to be empty at some point. All right. Now on this home, I have 25% down in F19. So my down payment on this property is going to be equals to my B4 times my F19. So that will be equal to $60,000. For my financing amount, I'm going to have this equals to $240,000 minus $60,000. And I'm going to do $180,000. Interesting. Okay. So then for my interest rate, I'll put 7.5% right now. It's probably roughly what it is. Could probably be higher now. So at 7.5% interest rate, assuming I rent this out as a 4-bedroom property, $1,500, I will cash flow negative $474 a month. That's a negative 8% cash on cash return, assuming you bought this property for 240 grand with a $5,000 rehab, just using round numbers here. So that's obviously not a deal. For me, it's not, right? Unless you're in a very high appreciating market. And again, this is not investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on this call, just simply talking you through how the thought process works when you want to update all the inputs in your analytical process. Now, some people might say, hey, I don't care if I lose a little bit of money or I break even, because they might say, hey, if I'm buying $1 million property and it's going up 5% every single year, I mean, that's like $50,000. So they're like, who cares about $100 or $200 of cash flow a month? But let's say you're going after 10%, right, to justify your execution risk. How much do you need to lower the asking price by in order to get a 10% return? So if I go to 100 grand, there we go. If I go to $98,000, great. Now I'm at 10%, 10.1. But I had to buy this property for 98 grand, assuming everything else stays constant, right? Same down payment, same rehab, same rent amount, $1,500. Okay. Because now I'm cash flowing $271 a month. Okay. All right. Well, interestingly enough, what if my rent goes up to $1,600? So now you can see how your willingness to pay goes up, right? Depending on what the rents are. And this is the easiest way to look at it. So going from $1,500, I went from a 10% return, 10.1. When I go to $1,600, I am now at a 13% return essentially. So now I can afford to maybe get $108,000. I'm able to pay a full $10,000 more in the purchase price or the asking price because my rent is at $1,600, assuming everything else stays constant, right? Same rehab amount, right? Because now I'm cash flowing $293 a month, and that's a 10.1% return. Okay, that's how you adjust numbers. Now, to make it even more effective, let's say interest rates normalize a little bit. Maybe there's some big interest rate action, and interest rates drop 1.5 points. So now you're at 6%. See how the cash on cash return number jumped up again? So now your willingness to pay might go up even higher. So now I'm at 120 grand, right? Because that's still 10.1%. But now I'm 120 grand, and my willingness to pay went up by full 12 grand just because my interest rates dropped 1.5 points. All right, that's why you have to track what's going on in the market, because this will affect naturally your purchase price or other folks' willingness to pay depending on how they're running their numbers, right? They might not put in 10% maintenance. So sometimes you might see people buy property for much more than you, but they might not have honestly analyzed the deal that well. I'm not saying that they did or didn't, but you can understand why they might arrive at the price if, let's say, their maintenance was half, right? It was 5% and 10%. These are huge, huge difference makers. All right, so now the last thing I'll do is, hey, let's say your rehab tripled, right? So I go to B6 and I multiply by 3, so I triple it. So now you're assuming you had an inspection contingency and you find out there's some issues with the home that needs a little repairs. You might say, hey, I know I gave it off for 120 grand, but now I'm only willing to pay you 106. There you go. 107. There you go. Because at 107, that's still a deal, even though my rehab tripled to $15,000. And that's how you can figure out what is your willingness to pay, what your cash flow amounts are, just by adjusting all the different levers so you don't get emotional about the deal and just run the numbers effectively so that you can understand whether or not it's worth your time. Because you have to understand what are you doing to justify your time, your energy for all that execution risk. Because what is execution risk? It's whether or not the contractor is going to show up and do what he or she said they're going to do, right? What if this inspector shows up late, or there's some issues with confirming or scheduling inspection? Because now you have 2 or 4 more weeks of holding costs. All these things can happen. So please, please, please be very mindful why you're doing this and justify to yourself, hey, is this property worth my time, my energy, and the risk that I'm taking on? All right. I hope this was helpful, everybody. I hope you're able to copy my homework today. This is my goal. Analyze the same deal I analyzed today using the same spreadsheet. If you guys want to copy a spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, plug in your name, your email, your phone number. That's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. And I hope you put it on your own YouTube channel, because at some point, someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you can tell them that you think this is a deal because you've been analyzing a deal every single day for the past 500 days or 470 days, whatever that day count might be for you. Might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. All right. I hope you all have an amazing Sunday. I hope you all spend some quiet time with your family and friends today, tonight, and this week. So that's what life is all about. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 471.